skiving off school and doing some jobs of helping out in a music shop called the Musical Bargain Centre in South Ealing with a guy called Dave Sims. And a guy called Chaz Cronk came in to buy a guitar, buy some strings. And Dave was talking to him and said, how's it going? He said, I said, got some sessions for a guy called Jimmy Thomas, who was actually the male singer of the Argentina Turner band. He said, he's coming in, he said, we've got huge problems because his band's coming in and they've been stopped at the airport, they've not been allowed in. He said, I'm putting a band together to do the sessions at Olympic. He said, and we're really struggling to find someone to do the brass arrangements and someone to play the organ. And Dave said, Rick will do it. I'm like, what? Screw it in this. He said, yeah. And I said, oh, fantastic. He said, I've got a tape in the car, I'll go and get it. So Dave said, you'll be all right, you'll be fine. I said, I'm playing dance bands and things. He said, then, I've been in rock and roll. I said, nothing like this. He said, I'll be fine. So he came with 2 tapes. I always remember these 2. He said, there's a song in it, it's called The Running Kind. He said, it needs a brass arrangement on it. I said, okay. He said, Olympic Studios, whatever it is, Friday, next Friday. He said, oh, can you book the brass section as well? Yeah, I'm sure you can. No problem, see you there, 7 o'clock. And off he went. Now, there was a few inherent problems there. First of all, I had the tape, but I hadn't got a tape recorder. I mean, I was at school, for heaven's sake, I hadn't got a transistor radio. So that was a bit of the first problem. So Dave helped me out with a cheap tape recorder to go and have a listen to a high-fidelity tape recorder. And so I went back and I wrote out these brass arrangements. I didn't know who to put by. Through a friend at the Top Rank Ballroom told me who to call, and I called this and I managed to get away. So I thought, okay, we're going to get away with it, bluff my way through this. Found out where Olympic Studios were in Hammersmith. Did a couple of recce journeys up there to make sure I knew it was, and arrived there at 7 o'clock in the evening. Now, I'd never been in a studio in my life. I hadn't got a clue any of the jargon or whatever. And the producers in the control room that day were Gus Dudgeon, Tony Visconti, and Denny Cordell. So it doesn't really get much bigger. But I really hadn't. I knew Denny Cordell was because I'd heard his name. He's quite famous, for all the stuff he'd put together. He hadn't brought Joe down yet from Sheffield, but he was quite a famous man, American. And the entire band was like a soul band, except for Chaz. There was only Chaz and me who were the only sort of black guys who were playing all this soul stuff. And Jimmy Thomas, who was a great guy, hey man, hey, how you doing, man? All this sort of thing. Oh yeah, great, I love it. So we went into the control room and we were doing a backtrack before the brass came in, and we sat there and they played the track through. And the only first, and then I can always remember a voice coming over the speaker saying, okay, Rick, if you put your cans on, then I'll talk to you direct as rigger, because you're going to MD this. I went, right, cans? What the cans? I said, right, okay, ready. He said, put your cans on. And I think this is where you're going to get really caught out. I ain't got a clue what cans are. So I bluffed and said, well, I can't see any cans. Thinking, he said, they're on the top of the organ. I went, look, and of course the only thing on there was the headphones. So I was like, got to be cans. Put them on. Great, okay. I thought, right, bluffed your way through that one. So we played the piece through, and I can only play in a sort of a classical manner. These guys are funking it away, and I'm going diddly diddly diddly. So when we finished, Denny Cordell said, Rick, will you come in the control? I want to have a chat with you. I went, oh, shit. So I went in and sat down. He said, where'd you learn to play like that? And I said, well, I'm sorry, but, I know you probably wanted it to sound like Booker T and that, but I can't play like Booker. He said, no, he said, I don't want you to. He said, I've never anybody played like that before. He said, not with this type of music. He said, come up and see me tomorrow. And this is where it all went horribly wrong, because at the moment I bluffed my way perfectly. I said, fine, no problem at all. What time do you want? He said, come up to Oxford Street, 68 Oxford Street. I always remember the number, Dumbarton House it was called. And he said, can you be there by 11 o'clock? I said, bit of a problem. I said, I could probably sneak off from school by lunchtime. He said, what? And I thought, sort of blown it there. I said, well, I'm still at school, actually. He went, okay, still at school, are you? I said, yeah. He said, well, it's up to you, isn't it, really? He said, I'll be there at 11 o'clock. And I was too. And then when I went on to the college, I started doing loads of sessions after that for lots of different people.
So that's the crucial moment.
That was the big thing. Yeah. And I went up to Dumbarton House. That's where I met Mark Bolan. He was up there. Joe Cocker came down. I mean, there was some fabulous names around. I mean, Mark was great. I did a few things with Mark to get it on. And I did the famous Dib Cochran and the Earwigs record with him too. The guy, I don't remember that. Oh, Mark got the right hump because David Bowie was there at the time, and David at that time was produced by Gus Dudgeon before he moved to Tony. So it was an amazing little group of people. Mark had a big row with the record company. And Tony Visco said to me one day, I was up there, he said, Rick, he said, Mark's got the hump. He wants to make a record under a different name, record he wants to do. He said, just to annoy the record, he said, we could put it out under a different name. And he said, it's you, me, I can't remember who was on drum, but I think it was Terry Cox, I'm not 100% certain. Tony played bass, Mark played guitar and sang. We went in to Trident Studios and we produced this record, Dib Cochran and the Earwigs. If you can find one, you'll pay. Well, there was one went on eBay recently, which was in appalling condition for I think just under £600. Very collectible. So I did loads of these sessions for all these people, and it was great fun. And that's why, when I went to college, I was doing all these sessions, and I thought, well, there's all these doors opening. Music is really changing, and it's branching out. Not so much changing, but it's just suddenly all these branches are blossoming out of music, and I want to be part of that. And that's why I did Space Oddity and Hunky Dory and those albums with David. And David Bowie was probably the biggest influence on me of anybody in the music industry, in the contemporary music industry.
What's that like?
He was the most professional person I've ever worked with. For example, when we did Hunky Dory, he invited me round to his house. He lived in Beckenham, then in Kent, and he had this lovely house, I always remember, with a gallery up the top and a beautiful grand piano. And he took out this battered old 12-string guitar, so I'm going to play you some songs. And he played me these songs. He said, make some notes if you want to on these songs. He said, and play them as piano pieces. And one after another, these amazing songs came out. Changes, Life on Mars. It's just unbelievable. And I said, these are the most astonishing songs, because albums then had a lot of throwaways. Good songs, throwaways. It was just cracker after a cracker. I said, unbelievable. He said, I want to approach them from a piano point of view rather than a guitar point of view. And I said, fantastic. And even then I said, I was looking at this battered old 12-string guitar. And he said, oh yeah, he said, I work on the principle with a song. He said, if it sounds good on this, it'll sound good. It can only get better. He said, too many people fool themselves by getting great sounds together and fooling them that what they're doing musically is great because the sounds are so good. And he said, you should always write on piano. And I have done. He said, because you can make it sound nice on the piano, when you start adding things and doing things, it can only enhance. And when we went into the studio, he never wasted time in a studio. In fact, when we started Hunky Dory, a couple of guys in the band hadn't learned the stuff as well as he wanted to. So he just cancelled the sessions for a week, sent them away to learn it, and said, come back. He said, do not waste studio time. And I can remember him saying to the guys there, he said, if one day studio time might be, oh great, I've got lots of money, I can do it. He said, but one day you'll regret having wasted 2 days in the studio because you'll think, oh, what would I give for 2 days in the studio now? He was incredibly pro all the way through. And I loved working for him. I worked for him when he produced as well. He produced Dana Gillespie, and I did I did all the sessions. And he was just the same as a producer. He worked brilliantly when he had a producer, either it was Gus Dudgeon or Tony Visconti, to watch the pair of them work together. He would tell Tony what he wanted. Tony would make that happen and make suggestions to David. It was a fabulous partnership. And he was always 75% to 80% prepared when he came in the studio, because he said there would always be that little bit of magic that came in, but he would never write in the studio. He said studio is not for writing. Studio is the last part of the assembly line. And I suppose that was the basic of everything I've ever done in the studio, worked in the studio since then. Probably 90% of my rules are based still on what I learnt from David's session.